So I recently played Steep, a snowboarding game developed by Ubisoft Annecy. I played a snowboarding game called Cool Borders when I was younger, and I loved it, so when I picked this up, I was excited to play this. Though let's be real here, it's probably because of this. I was completely hooked after a few minutes. But why? How is it that I was so invested in this game after not playing any snowboarding games in such a long time? Steep is a game that heavily relies on a 30-second gameplay loop, something that Jamie Griesemer, a developer at Bungie, explains in this quote. In Halo 1, there was maybe 30 seconds of fun that happened over and over and over and over again, and so if you can get 30 seconds of fun, you can pretty much stretch that out to be an entire game. The game uses the loop of snowboarding down a slope, wingsuiting through trees, or paragliding near the mountains to make for an extremely enjoyable experience. You want to do tricks off the Raving Rabbids' heads? You can do that. You want to rocket wingsuit through the Alps? Have fun with it, because it's a wide open playground and it's yours to conquer. The world doesn't feel overwhelming because of this, despite the pretty fair amount of content. The game has 118 public events they ask you to play through to level up and unlock the mountain stories, which are kind of like missions. And I'll admit, these are normally just quests that ask you to follow your AI companion down a set path until they stop, and I'm not a fan of these, but some are really fun. Like this one has you destroying evil snowmen, and another one has you wingsuiting through holes in the mountain for a hole-in-one style mission. You may have realized that earlier I said rocket wingsuiting. This is something that completely took me by surprise. I figured that it would mainly be more grounded and realistic traversal methods, and when I saw the rocket wingsuit, I kind of freaked out a little bit. I never knew I wanted this. The ability to fly around beautiful snowy landscapes like Iron Man is wonderful, and I seriously think it's one of the best additions to the game. It's a little weird with the controls though sometimes, and I'll get to that a little later, but it works quite well for the most part. To unlock most of the 118 events and most of the 30 mountain stories in the game, you'll need to find drop zones, which are just fast travel points. You don't really seem to need them because you can just travel to the starting point of any of the events. You do actually have to find them to reveal the challenges though, and there are 110 of the zones, so you really shouldn't have too much of a problem finding most of them until you're only missing around 10 or so. I actually ended up with 98 without even looking for them. There are also 149 points of interest, which are unique locations or just a glacier or a town or something. Now, as of the time of writing, less than 350 people have the achievement for 115 gold medals in the public events according to TrueAchievements.com. And I got it, so I can say, holy cow, this game is difficult if you want the gold medal in all of them. I spent hours on some of the events. I had read while playing that the hardest challenges are the two wingsuit events, Fallen Rocks and La Fuse, hope I'm saying that right, and one snowboard race, Valak Village. And while, yes, these are difficult, I had a far more difficult time with the Photograph Challenge and Lumberjack snowboard races. Lumberjack ended up taking around 2 hours, and the Photograph Challenge took me over 4 hours. And I had such a hard time with the Photograph Challenge, and I honestly could not figure out what I was doing wrong. Around the 3-hour mark, I looked the race up on YouTube, and I saw a video where the guy beat the race in around 1 minute and 30 seconds, and the gold AI is at 1 minute and 44 seconds. And I perfected the run to a T of what the guy did, and I only got it by around 1 minute and 42. So I can only assume that the developers are still tuning the game, or at least have since the video has been uploaded, and I was just honestly relieved to be done with it. In comparison, both of the wingsuit events only took me around 45 minutes to an hour and a half each, and while it may sound annoying to constantly screw up and make no progress for that long, I was consistently getting better. Every single time I reset the race, I had figured out something for better or for worse. Even Valak Village, which was at a time considered to be the hardest snowboarding/ski race, I finished in about 30 minutes to my complete surprise. I didn't realize how fast I was able to figure out some of these within the first couple of attempts. But there are two real reasons for the difficulty in this game. The AI is complete and utter nonsense in some of these events. I know the developers wanted to add difficulty to the harder races, but some of these events are seriously impossible realistically. Most people are not going to grind over and over for hours to learn the right path or the right trick to win. And I don't blame the developers at all for this, and in fact I hope they have learned from this, because I absolutely think that some of the difficulty is required. Hard events should not always be beaten on the first try. Easy events should mainly be a tutorial or a stepping stone to continue to teach the player. Medium events should always test you without being utterly frustrating in the end. and hard should push you to learn everything you have learned throughout your time playing. These developers know this on some of the events. The freestyle trick events are this to a T. At the beginning, the events help you learn the tricks and what movements to do to make bigger combos. And as you progress, you'll be tested with getting a far higher score, and towards the end, you'll need to do everything you've learned to make an extremely high score. This is the perfect progression for this game, and it's why I love the trick events over the paragliding ones, which, for the most part, don't seem to require any skill. You just feel like you're on autopilot for the majority of these events. Now, on the other hand, while the controls are normally precise and at the very least functional for this type of game, in some events they just seem to stop working entirely. The photograph challenge mentioned earlier took me so long because during the specific event, my controls just decided to go wonky at the worst times. For what was probably the majority of the time spent in this event, each restart I felt I wasn't learning anything. Most of the event is you speeding down a slope filled with trees and very sharp turns, and I switch back and forth from snowboarding to skiing, which changes the gameplay slightly, but it's enough sometimes to make a major difference depending on the event. I found that doing the exact same motions for the same event tends to make the skiing crash more often, but make more precise turns, where the snowboarding allows for more mistakes, but can completely derail your run if you need a quick turn. I don't really have a problem with the controls on anything other than the snowboard/skis, but considering that's where the majority of your time will be spent, it's a little frustrating. I said earlier that the rocket wingsuit was a little weird, and while it is almost never enough to cause any problems, during the 3 events for it, the only problem you should encounter is moving while boosting. It's completely understandable as to why this is, and it's avoidable so long as you don't boost the entire event, and you shouldn't have to, as there aren't any that require you to do so. There is a mechanic with the regular wingsuit to dodge left and right with the right stick, and it's something I didn't even know about until the Lock to Use event. This mechanic is something that if you don't know about it, it will take a little time to learn and even longer to master. I didn't like it at first, but I really liked it after a little while, and it helped me finish the last few gold medals a little easier. The paragliding doesn't really have any tricks to it other than just staying close to a mountain. It will lift you up, and if you want the wind to stop moving you, then you just hold the left trigger. One final mechanic I'd like to mention is knockout. If you're traveling at a high velocity and you hit an object, you might get knocked out instead of just falling down. If you're wingsuiting, rocket or normal, and you hit something, you will be knocked out. If you're snowboarding or skiing and hit something while rolling around at the speed of sound, you will probably be knocked out. It's pretty much 50-50 with that one, and I've only gotten gold on some races because of pure luck because of it. It's not annoying enough to be a real pain, but if you're about to win and the controls screw up and you clip a tree or something and get knocked out, you're probably going to be frustrated. This game doesn't really have a story besides the mountain stories, but they don't have a linear storyline. To unlock the final mountain story, you just have to make it to level 23, which isn't too difficult if you're getting into gold medals, and you'll probably end up there after about half the events. So if you're looking for a deep story, you won't find it here, but if you'd like a few hours of snowboarding fun, you've got it. Now, as with all racing games, or skating games, or snowboarding games, this game has a soundtrack to play in the background. As anyone who's played a game like this knows, the soundtrack can make or break the game even after the loop starts to wear out a little bit. You shouldn't be too disappointed with it, it's pretty good. I'm a little picky with my music and I wasn't bothered by anything I didn't like, but I also found a few new songs to enjoy. With the time you'll spend on this game, if you play it until the end, you will probably find something to enjoy about it. Though during my time, I found myself a little more focused on the gameplay over any music. The game also has an original game soundtrack and it's pretty good. I highly recommend listening to it, even if you don't play the game. All in all, I really like this game. I didn't mention the expansions or anything because I haven't played them. They have added in new maps to play in, and I know that at least the Alaska expansion is free, but they also have a map in Asia as well. There are 4 paid expansions that add new events and vehicles: Winterfest, Extreme Pack, Road to the Olympics, and the X Games Pack. The first 3 of which add achievements and trophies if you're into that. I hope the developers at Ubisoft Annecy got the recognition they deserve for this awesome snowboarding game. Maybe one day we will get Steep 2, and if we do, I know that I'll play it sooner than I did this one.